Welcome, fellow watch lovers. Today we're looking at the Pagani Design PD-1731. It is an homage to a Grand Seiko. First, we'll go over some of the specifications of the watch. We have a top hat style sapphire crystal. We have a textured blue dial on this particular variant. We do have loomed hands, which is a little unusual in the Grand Seiko design language. The indices are polished, and we have a case as a brushed bezel, brushed top lugs, and then there's a chamfer on here with some brushing. And then on the side of the case, there is a different type of polishing than the chamfer is. So you have this interesting transition from brush top to, well, a polished chamfer, and then a different type of polishing or polishing effect on the side of the case. The bracelet is polished on the sides and brushed down the center. This Pagani Design clasp is not one that I've had on any model that I own. It has a flip lock with 2 pusher pins and does have a milled clasp. The case back has a Pagani Design logo, water resistant to 100 meters, as well as the model number. This is the first Pagani Design watch I've ever received that has a quality control sticker on the back. Interesting addition, and see if they continue that moving forward. Talk about the bracelet for a second here. This is, as you can see, is looser at the connection point. We do have the female end links. You can see it's a little loose there, and that does create a little bit of a jangly effect. Same type of thing on both sides. The rest of the links are not quite as bad. I did put Loctite on the single bracelet pin that I removed. So on both sides of that, I did put Loctite, and that actually tightened it up a little bit. Could use some better tolerances there to improve this. Brush finishing is okay, maybe a little rough. I mean, there's no actual rough parts, but you can see that the brushing is a little more coarse than on some other Pagani Design bracelets. I personally like brushed pieces, and I appreciate the fact that this doesn't have a lot of ostentatious polishing on it. Many Grand Seiko watches, you'll notice that they tend to have a bevel that's highly polished, part of their signature and their design language. I actually like not having fully polished pieces. I like more of a matte finish, and that was one of the reasons why I jumped on this one literally the day they put it up for sale. Not only have been curious about trying to get some Grand Seiko design aesthetics in the lineup, but also the fact that they didn't go with fully polished everything made it so I figured it would fit more into my style. It does have a screw down crown. It has a Seiko VH31 Mechaquartz Movement, so you can see the hand ticking along at 4 beats per second. This is a quartz movement. It is not mechanical movement or an automatic movement, even though it doesn't look like it's ticking. So the ticks per second is somewhere between a quartz watch and a mechanical watch. The pointed hands for the minute and hour marker, I think my critique here would be from the standpoint of, I know a lot of people are going to say it doesn't need loom on the hands for a dress watch like this. While I tend to agree, I'm somewhat okay with the decision here. It doesn't bother me that much, but I can certainly appreciate that someone would prefer that. I think to me, one of the standouts for potential improvement would be giving the hands a little bit more of a 3D effect from the standpoint of on a Grand Seiko watch, you'll notice that they frequently will will bevel the side of the hands to give polishing on them. Since this doesn't have that, it tends to have a little bit more of a flat look, and that's an area where you could see that they could potentially improve upon with that adjustment. On the dial, I love the fact that this has a symmetrical dial and doesn't have ostentatious branding on here. It really just has the Pagani Design logo and then the text, which I'd argue is unnecessary. It says 100 meters is telling you the water resistance. It's not overly noticeable, really. I think, honestly, the better design choice would have been to leave that out. I am aware that there was actually a voting process that went on before the release of this, and those that participated in the voting, the majority came out with including that text versus having no text on the dial. That's why they made it. It wasn't exactly necessarily a decision from Pagani Design in-house team, but it was voted on publicly, and that's what they landed on. I personally think it would actually look better without that, but not a big deal. I am a fan of textured dials, so wanted to provide some close-up of what this looks like from a few different angles. One thing to note about this piece is that the bracelet is certainly smaller than many other Pagani Design watches. Normally, I remove a minimum of 2, if not 3 links for my 7.5-inch wrist. On this particular model, I was only able to remove 1 link to have it actually fit my wrist. 2 links I could get it to fit, other than the fact it would be too tight for wrist expansion, and therefore I literally had to remove 1 and then put it on the smallest adjustment link to make it work for me. So bear in mind, if you have a larger wrist, this watch may not work for you without either putting it on a different bracelet or strap or getting additional links. Wanted to provide a little comparison side to side with a couple other Pagani Design watches you may be familiar with. So you get a sense of the size of the watch compared to some other options. And with that, let's get some measurements of the watch. Many times there will be some question as to whether or not Pagani Design got the dimensions correct versus what they listed. This one is absolutely 38 millimeters in diameter without the crown. It is about 12.5 millimeters thick with the dome sapphire crystal. You're going to want a 20 millimeter strap to replace this. It tapers down to 16, and then the clasp without the pushers is back up to 17.67. Weighing the piece is adjusted for my 7.5-inch wrist. It's 119 grams, which is quite a bit lighter than some other models. Of course, this is an automatic watch, but on wrist, you can definitely feel that they are quite a bit different. When I adjusted the bracelet, I did want to mention the fact that it has the end links are screw end links. They're not push pin. And I will note that these were, I would say, the easiest bracelet to adjust out of any screw link Pagani Design watch that I've had, and I own more than 30 Pagani Design watches, so that I think is saying something. I'm hoping this is a sign that they're improving their quality control tolerances in that area, as there have definitely been a few Pagani Design watches where it's been quite difficult to actually get the screw pins out and back in and adjusted. This watch did not give me any issues on that front. Now, I'm left-handed, so in terms of a demonstration of what it looks like on the wrist, this is going to look a little bit different than probably most of you, but you can see that it does. You can see that it does work well in terms of having a nice curvature to it, fitting well on the wrist. I always leave a gap in here for wrist expansion and try to usually measure that by about a finger's distance. It is lighter than most of my other pieces, but it feels quite comfortable, and a dress watch is nice to have something that in some respects feels like it isn't there. Personally, I like the watch, and I think that it's nice to see Pagani Design take on some Grand Seiko design aesthetics, incorporate some of that in their lineup. This is their first VH31 movement, and I've been very excited to add one of those to my collection, and was glad that it made it into this particular model, as is one that I was interested in purchasing and adding to the collection. I hope this is successful so that they continue to add more of this style and these movements into the lineup, as I appreciate having accuracy without necessarily having to adjust the watch every day with a mechanical movement. And with someone with a number of watches, it's nice to be able to grab and go sometimes. I appreciate that they did not add the word quartz to the movement, as you've probably seen on a few other VH31 models. I don't see any reason to advertise to others that there's a quartz movement inside the watch, especially when you have a sweeping hand that usually defies that characterization. The watch isn't without its flaws. I mentioned the bracelet could potentially use some improvements in terms of tighter tolerances. This is certainly a watch that would look great on some straps. I have not taken off the bracelet yet to try those, but when you order these, you do have the option of either a leather strap or a bracelet, so keep that in mind. If you're someone who has no interest in a bracelet, that certainly is an option for you. I think there's the areas for improvement, such as the hands as well, but realistically, I think this is a very good value for the money. Looks different than many of the other options, both on the market and within Pagani Design's own collection. I hope this review has been valuable to you, and please like and subscribe if you enjoy this type of content.